My name is Robert Franklin. I'm conducting an oral history interview with Tom Bennett on September 18th, 2017. The interview is being conducted on the campus of Washington State University Tri-Cities. I'll be talking with Tom about his experiences working at the Hanford site. And for the record, can you state and spell your full name for us?
Full name is Thomas J. Bennett, Thomas, middle initial J, and then Bennett, Bennett.
Great. Thanks. And do you prefer Tom?
I go by Tom, yes.
Okay.
Unless it's academic circles.
I'm fine with.
Okay.
I'm fine with. Casual's fine with me. So Tom, tell me how and why you came to the area to work for Hanford site.
I graduated from UCLA in 1964, and my goal was to get a long ways away from the Los Angeles area. And
Okay.
the final choice was between Houston, where they were doing the Man on the Moon, which was another 5 years before that happened, and Hanford, which to me was exciting because it was nuclear energy.
And what was your degree in?
Engineering.
Engineering. Okay. Just basic.
Yeah,
Engineering?
well, UCLA thought they were way ahead of everyone. In your junior and senior year, if you were an engineering major, you had to take 2 courses in electrical engineering, a course in nuclear engineering, a course or 2 in mechanical engineering, and they tried to spread everything because someone had done a study, and they observed that people who were a mechanical engineer, 5 years later they were working as a civil engineer, and vice versa.
Oh, okay.
So they tried to make it real broad. And then I went to University of Washington. I got a master's degree in nuclear engineering, and then a doctorate in civil engineering from WSU.
Oh, okay. And when did you finish up at WSU?
88.
88. Oh, okay. But you weren't in school. Were you in school that entire time?
No,
Were you working?
I worked at Hanford from 64 to 70, but I took 67 and 68 off to get the master's degree at University of Washington.
Okay.
And then I went over to WSU between 87 and 88 to complete my doctorate.
Okay. And what? Sorry. Tell me about your work at Hanford. What did you do?
Well, I started off in the 300 area. They had a trainee program, I think it was. You had to work someplace while you got your security clearance. And we had the badges. The first one was a red badge, and then a yellow badge, and then a green badge is when you finally had your Q clearance.
Mm.
And I worked at the 300 area. I remember working with Bill Bright and Carl, somebody. They had a machine there that they took plutonium in a gassed out container, and then they had a smasher that would when it was red hot and had been outgassing for an hour or so, they'd have the smasher come down on it, and they wanted to get 99% theoretical density of plutonium.
So to kind of, you mean to like turn it into a solid?
Well, it was already solid,
Already
but they
solid.
heated it red hot, and they had a little tube came out the top, and then they cut the tube off, and the smasher came down and crushed it. So good thing it didn't blow up too.
Yeah. What amount? Like we're working
About
grams
a kilogram,
or a kilogram.
I think.
Okay.
Because if they get too much, it goes critical on you.
Right. And what was the purpose of that? Why?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Well, a guy by the name of John Burnham, I think it was his idea to do this smashing, and he got all kinds of credit for it and awards and so on and so forth. So it was his pet project, and I wound up working there to start with.
And what did you do there?
Watched.
Just watch it. Just
Pretty
observe.
much, yeah.
Okay. I wonder if you could tell me talk a little bit about security, since you mentioned Q clearance, security and secrecy. What was that process like? How long did it take?
I think it took about 6 months, but I didn't know anything about clearances when I came here. But you had 3 different colored badges. One was when you start, and then you get partially cleared. You get another color, and then the green one was the final security clearance. I believe they were called. What do you have you've talked to other people about this, haven't you?
A little
What
bit,
do they
yeah.
call those clearances? Top secret or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not a clearance expert.
Yeah, I think the first, one of the colors was yellow, and one was, I think, red, and then green was when you finally could go out in the area and work.
Right. Okay. And so what did you do after you got your clearance?
I had 3 or 4 of the 3-month assignments. One of them was at the 300 area with the crusher or smasher, and then another was at N reactor, I believe. It was the new production reactor at the time, and I think I had one at B reactor operations, because I remember they put me on they had A, B, C, D shifts, and you worked 6 days and then 7 swings and then 6 graveyards, and you got 1 2/3 days off between swing and night, and then after you did the graveyard you got 4 2/3 days off to come back and start the ABCD shift over again. What I remember about that was I could not adjust to it. Some of these guys had done it for 20, 30 years and they got along fine. I could not adjust to the graveyards.
And that's where you would be there overnight, right?
Well, you'd be there from midnight till 8 in the morning or 11, but it took an hour to get out there, an hour to get back, so that whatever your shift was, you wound up doing 10 or 11 hours. Or if you have I don't know what, half hour for lunch, maybe it's 12 hours to do 8 hours.
Wow.
It was more than the 8, because the ride out was an hour and the ride back was an hour on the buses. And I know I was not real happy with the salary because it wasn't as big as I thought I was worth. But they said, well, Tom, you can ride the bus for 50 miles for a nickel. Oh, well, that's the... I assumed that was the economy, so that the money I made would be a lot. But
Where'd you live when you worked out?
2009 George Washington Way.
And what was that, house or apartments or?
It was a house on. I tried to find it on the way in, but I didn't. I was past it, 2300 block before I saw it. I'll see if I can find it on the way back out. But first I lived there, and then later on I lived at 2404 Concord. I lived at 1408 Perry Court, and I eventually bought a house.
Did you live in any alphabet houses?
F houses? No, I remember the
any
F.
alphabet houses.
Yeah, I know what B,
Oh,
D,
okay.
F. No, I lived at 2404 Concord. 2009 George Washington Way was the first one, and then at 1408 Perry Court for a while, and then I eventually wound up at 2404 Concord. And that's the one I bought.
Oh, okay. And so when you were working out these graveyards at B Reactor, what was your job? What were you doing?
What I remember is, since I was kind of a trainee, I'd go through the records, and it was really fascinating to me to read about the early days when they started Hanford up. They had no idea what was going on or how big it would have to be. And Enrico Fermi was out here. The old guys were here then that had been here when he was here, and they called him Henry Farmer. But interesting, the older guys were doing the work, and the young guys were telling them what to do and how to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
What and why was that?
Well, this is during the war, World War II, and people had to have jobs. And if you were in the Army, if you're young, you were in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, Marines. And if you were older, a lot of them, I think 50,000 people came up here to work at Hanford.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big camp out there someplace, fenced in where you lived. And what I remember doing was reading the historical records about when it started up, and I know it was because of Fermi that first they're going to have just the circular B reactor. What is it? 1,004 tubes that went through.
2,000.
2,000 tubes. Anyway, originally we were just going to have a circular form because that's the most efficient, but Enrico Fermi made sure that they had the corners, the tubes, and sure enough, I believe it's zirconium, that when they started up, everything went great, and then all of a sudden, they went down.
The xenon poisoning.
Xenon poisoning. Yeah, it was xenon poisoning, and Fermi figured that out. They figured I was xenon, and then they put more. They filled up the rest of the tubes, the corners, and that was enough to overcome the xenon to get things going.
Right.
And you've been out to B reactor, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, and you see how big that thing is? And they built that, what, 60, 70 years ago?
Yeah.
It was quite a deal.
It was. I'm wondering if you could describe a typical work day out at B reactor when you were out there.
Well, I'd ride the bus out there, and the older guys on the bus, they played cards all the way out there. I thought, these guys are kind of crazy. But then 6 weeks later, I'm playing cards right along with them. I learned how to play pinochle. I didn't know anything about, virtually nothing about cards, but it cost me quite a few nickels, but I did learn. Got to be as good as the rest of them after a while. And I thought it was kind of weird because these guys would play cards all the way out. During lunch, they'd play cards, and they'd play cards all the way back for nickels.
Yeah.
Pinochle for nickels. And eventually, I was in there with the thick of them. I do remember at N reactor, a fellow named Milton Lewis. He had been a teacher at UCLA when I was there. And I ran across him again at, I think they had three guys there. One was Milt Lewis, another was Warren Nekedum, and the third was Roy Shoemaker. And the workers there nicknamed him the Shoe, the Jew, and the Shrew. So.
And so what? I'm wondering. Stories about the bus are great. What did you? What was your day-to-day job at B reactor besides reading up on the history? What were you tasked with doing out there?
Well, it was called operations. They ran the reactor, and they sat there and watched the reactor go, and they'd from time to time they'd have to refuel it, and I'd watch that. You'd be on the front face, and like an idiot, I wondered what was inside the tube. So I looked inside one when it was empty, and then I realized there's probably radiation coming out of that into my eye. It's probably not a real good idea. But I'm a young kid, 23 or 4, not knowing anything. But that was refueling was one of the things, and around back, well, when the tubes or the fuel elements, when they'd been irradiated enough, they pushed them out the back. They went into a pool. It was 20 feet deep, and you go around back, not while they were discharging them, but afterwards. You could go around the back and look down that 20-foot pool, and you could see the glow. It had a greenish blue glow from the irradiated fuel elements. And they'd sit there for a while, then they'd take them to the 200 area and process them. And interestingly enough, 2,000 pounds of uranium would make 2 pounds of plutonium. Or maybe 1 pound. I mean, it was extremely small percentage.
Yeah.
And then when you think of the 200 area where they did all those separations, how much, well, they put the things in double-shelled tanks. Now those tanks are rotting. It's leaking into the Columbia River. All this is still going on, 60, 70 years later.
Did you ever go out to the 200 area at all?
No. Well, I drove by it every day on the way
to
work, but I didn't go in and look at it. I knew they had tunnels. When they built it, I remember from reading a long time ago, that they were going to have to use remote control to handle these things, so they used the remote control to build it.
Yep.
So, and then how deep were those troughs, those trenches? Were they?
Oh, I don't know.
I remember reading about it. They were long. Those buildings
very
were
long. I think
Yeah.
they're something like 20 feet deep and then 40 feet wide. They're all cells.
And
they're all
almost a mile long or whatever. They had.
Really long. Yeah, I covered several football fields. And,
Right.
Yeah, huge. So you worked at so you were 300 area and then N and then B.
Right.
Did you work anywhere? And how long did you work at?
Each assignment I think was 3 months long.
Oh, okay.
And I think I had 3 or 4 of them.
And then what did you do after that?
I believe I worked at N reactor, and then I left in '67 to go over to University of Washington to get a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
Came back in '68, and from '68 to '70, I'm pretty sure I was an N reactor. Because that was exciting. You know, they were producing power as well as plutonium.
Yeah. And what was your job then at N reactor?
I was called a nuclear engineer. I worked for Roy Shoemaker, and there was 7 or 8 guys in the group. What I noticed, because I noticed that all the new engineers that came in 6 months to a year, they were gone. And I was just aware of it, sort of in passing. And then after I went and got my master's degree and came back, instead of working for an old guy, he's gone now, Shoemaker is, but he'd been a engineering instructor at Oregon or Oregon State, one of those colleges. When I came back, I worked for Paul Cohn. He was a young guy. He was 30, 35, something like that. And he had a fairly good-sized group. And I think this was back in, I think, in the 300 area. It was downtown. I worked for him, and the contrast between working for Shoemaker and working for Cohn was like between night and day. I understood why all those guys left Shoemaker after I worked for a good supervisor. I was a brand new kid fresh out of college. I didn't have any experience. Didn't know who a good instructor or a good teacher from a good, what do you call it, supervisor from a bad one. But after I had 2 supervisors, I realized why all those guys left after they'd been there not very long.
What was it about Shoemaker versus Cohn that made people leave so early?
One of the things was Shoemaker had a pet, and he'd give the same assignment. He's like a college professor. He gave me assignment, he gave his pet. And I remember I was fairly good at math, so I figured out an exact solution to this thing. And this other kid, the pet, he did an approximate solution, and he came out to my office. I was out in the area a little bit. It was a different building. It wasn't the N reactor building. It was an outbuilding. He came out there because he had an office inside, and he wanted to know all about my performance of calculations for such a thing. And eventually I figured out he wanted to know what I'd done because I'd done a better job than he had, and he was the pet. This didn't go over well with him.
Oh. It's kind of playing favorites.
Well, he's playing favorites, but then the unfavorite did a better job than the favorite did.
Yeah.
So the pet didn't like that.
Yeah, I bet not.
But see, and that didn't happen with Cohn. Cohn was a very good supervisor.
And you worked with Cohn at N reactor as well.
No, I wish I could remember. But I wish I had those sheets that I lost, because it would tell me where I worked and when.
Sure.
And I can only remember 3 of the 4 assignments. I don't know what the 4th one was.
It's okay.
Yeah.
When you
Been
say
like 60, 70 years.
So when you say nuclear engineer, a group of 7 or 8 people, what kind of job is that? Is it a lot of calculations work? Are you in the control room?
Well, one of the things we did, we put a bunch of thermocouples in the back of the reactor in a tube. We wanted to get the heat distribution. It was a tube-in-tube fuel element. They had about an inch diameter tube that went down the middle, and then they had some struts, and then they had another tube outside it, which was kind of a interesting arrangement, so they could get water flowing between the 2 tubes, and we wanted to get the heat distribution of that, so we set up the thermocouples to measure the heat and then figured out how hot it was getting, and we could use that to improve the design for the next generation. Is that type of work. That's one assignment I remember.
Oh, okay. Do you remember any other assignments?
No.
Oh, okay.
I did like doing the math, though.
Yeah.
Figuring out you get the regular dimensions and then the tolerance, the plus and minus, so you figure out all the variations and how much difference there can be from the smallest to largest, and how much fluid would go through it, and what the approximations are.
And then after 70, did you leave Hanford?
I went over to WSU to work on a doctorate.
Oh, okay. And when did you start that?
In 72, I believe.
Okay.
I think I was there from 70 to 72. Do you remember, Marianne? Okay. Because I went to work in late January of 64. and I worked there till 67. Then I went over to University of Washington 67, 68. Came back in 68, and 68 to 70. I worked here at Hanford, and then 70 to 72 I taught at WSU. I taught statics, dynamics, and fluid mechanics
Okay.
during those 2 years at WSU.
And that's why you were working on your doctorate.
Right.
And
Well,
then,
they gave me the title predoctoral teaching associate. I taught those 3 courses, and went and took classes too.
okay. And then you finished your doctorate in 70, 72.
70, no, 88.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
88. Yeah, I didn't. What? Trying to remember why I didn't. There was a reason I didn't finish it in 72. I'll think of it later and tell
Sure.
you.
And then, were you at WSU that entire time?
No,
Oh,
just
okay.
70 to 72, and then I took a 1-year temporary teaching assignment at a community college, Big Bend Community College in Moses Lake. I went
Yeah.
there for 1 year because Big Bend had finagled themselves a contract in Germany, and what they did was they taught Army guys and servicemen. They gave them classes so they could get their. Before Big Bend went there, they got GEDs.
Mhm.
Big Bend had the bright idea of, instead of giving the Army guys GEDs, they give them actual high school diplomas. This brought a lot of money in to the
Oh, yeah, I
college. Yeah, because high school diploma is a lot better than GED. And I used some of that money to start a circuit rider type program, and between 72 and 79, I think it was, 78, I taught computer classes in 17 different high schools, all the way from Cooley Dam in the north to Connell in the south, and east and west from Quincy to Washtuckna.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I talked to you earlier about when you first started. My first year of doing those computer classes, I thought I'd really done a good job. And I looked back at it 3 or 4 years later, and I was ashamed and embarrassed of how little I'd done the first year, when she caught on. And at that time, Big Bend had a music teacher named Wayne Freeman. He had some kind of contacts with Hollywood, and he'd bring in people from Hollywood. They have what they call a play. What do they call it? You remember the name of those plays, Marianne? And they were musical productions. I know the first time he brought Leonard Nimoy up, and he played Oliver, played the lead role in Oliver, and for 8 or 10 years while Freeman was the music instructor, he brought these Hollywood type people up,
Wow.
and they'd have play, and they had a 700 or 800 seat theater. It was packed for all 4 or 5 performances.
I imagine that would be a pretty big deal for those.
Oh, it was a big deal, and that was the time I was doing the high schools, and I'd have my high school classes come down to it, and they loved it. It was great.
Were you saying computer? Were you working with like mainframes and that kind of thing?
That's
Or
what they had started off with, upper left corner cut cards.
Right.
You know, they're about. You've seen them, haven't
I've
you?
seen them. Yeah, I never had to use them, but I've seen them.
Yeah, well, I would carry. I had a pickup truck. I would take the key punch machines to the high schools, and the kids would punch out the cards, and I'd take them back and run them through the computer and take them back with the output, and then they'd go back until they got them to run, and that was a big deal then. But that was what, in the 70s?
Yeah.
I mean, that was long before they had the personal computers.
Yeah.
Everything was mainframe.
Yep. And so, did you ever come back to working in Hanford?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I did that high school. What was really interesting to me was the only kids in these high schools that would take these classes were the top 2 or 3%. The kids that go on to Harvard or Yale or BYU or some big type University of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
These were really, really bright kids, and I knew that they were smarter than the kids I was teaching at Big Bend. And it took me a while to figure that out too, because I realized later that all I had was the top 2 or 3% of each high school.
Right.
But I knew, why is it these high school kids are smarter than my college kids? Well, because they're the top of the line.
Yeah. So what were some of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of your work at Hanford?
Well, being involved with what ended World War II was a big thing to me because my dad was in the Philippines getting ready to take part in the invasion of Japan, which they figured, if that did happen, would have been 1 million casualties. And what was it? The Civil War only took 750,000 from both sides in 4 or 5 years. I mean, that would have really been bad because of the atomic bomb, because of the Christ program. And in some of the reading I've done, what they essentially did was they took 50, 60 years of automatic research and condensed it into 2 or 3. And the result was the atomic bomb.
Sure. So that was very rewarding to you, to be involved in kind of the continuation of that.
Yeah, and what had saved I thought it saved my dad's life, probably.
Yeah. What about challenging aspects? Earlier you mentioned that the graveyard shifts were pretty challenging.
That was challenging. Yeah, I couldn't. I realized I couldn't do it. I thought I was Superman, but I'm not.
Yeah. Oh, was there anything else that challenged you out there? Maybe the structure or some of the work or.
Well, I thought it was exciting
Okay.
to do that type of work,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it and liked it.
Were you there when? No, you got there in '64, so you weren't there when Kennedy visited.
No, I wasn't. But he had been out there.
Yeah, yeah. Any memories of like the social scene or local politics in Tri-Cities and Richland when you?
I remember a guy named Mike McCormick. He was he lived right behind us, near a block or so from George Washington. But he eventually got elected to Congress, and I don't know how long he stayed. Do you remember? Have you heard of him, Mike McCormick, Congressman Mike McCormick?
Take a look at that though.
I know he was in the state house and state senate, and then he got elected to Congress in the 70s, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I'm wondering if you could describe the ways in which security or secrecy at Hanford impacted your work.
Well, I did read a lot about when I was doing those 3-month assignments, there was a good deal of focus on security, and like I said, it took several months for me to get my clearance. And you had to go through gates, and somebody would check. If you didn't have your pass, you didn't go to the gate. And that was for every place.
Did you ever forget your pass?
No.
Okay.
But I do remember when I was on the assignments, because I was a trainee, I did not get holiday pay. So during one graveyard shift, I was home sleeping, and I did not work that day because they'd had to pay me time and a half. But at 3 a.m, the guys out there called me, wanted to know how I was doing. You know, that type of humor.
Yeah, sure.
You sleeping okay, Tom? We're getting paid holiday pay, you're not. That type of thing.
How come you didn't go back to Hanford after going to WSU?
Well, I took the 1-year temporary assignment at Big Bend. And
Yeah.
like I said, they had the money from Germany.
Sure.
So I spent the next 6 or 7 years teaching high school kids, like 17 different high schools. And by then I was pretty much associated with the community college, and I worked there till 1990.
Oh, okay.
That I left to get my master's degree, and somebody else took that program over, and it collapsed. And then I taught at Big Bend till 1990.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to remember what I did from 1990 to 2000.
You ran for office.
What's that?
You ran for office. State representative. You ran for office.
Oh yeah, I didn't get, but that was just one run. What work was I doing?
Worked at Boeing.
Well, that's right. I did from 79 to 81. I went to Boeing. Worked there. They were developing the 767, and I got to be a senior engineer in tool design. That was really fun working for Boeing. I loved that.
I bet.
That was well, when I went there, they just built this great big huge building, and somebody said, "Come on, we're going to tour the building." So I went and toured the building. It was empty. And at Hanford, they had all these programs. They'd schedule it when it's going to happen, then it gets stretched out, stretched out, stretched out. Something was supposed to take 2 years would take 10. At Boeing, there's an empty building, if we were going to do the 767, and that was 1979. I went to the empty building. In 1981, airplane number 6 was rolling out the door. They have their schedules, they keep them. And they said, if you don't get your assignment done, you will stay there until it's done. If it's, the one guy had stayed there 36 hours, and I went and talked to the supervisor. I said, he wasn't any good after 15, 20 hours. Why'd you keep him 36? The supervisor says, Tom, do you know how much Boeing has to pay every day they are late delivering an airplane? I had no idea. $50,000 per day for a late plane. You have an assignment, you get that done, or you stay till it's done.
Right.
So that was a different attitude and atmosphere than I'd had at Hanford.
Interesting. I guess that's kind of the difference that a private company would
Commercial.
take on it. Yeah, commercial company would take on a project versus.
You get an assignment, you get it done.
Right. I should ask this a lot earlier, but just kind of curious. How did you hear about Hanford? When you were in college and you were looking at places to go work, how did you hear about Hanford?
They had a job fair at UCLA. No, wait a minute. I went to, I think it was in Canada, there's a job fair I went to. And that's how I found out about Hanford, which was back in the United States and in Washington.
Right.
So, which where I lived anyway.
And so they had like a booth or something there, and
Yeah.
'cause that would have been General Electric at the time.
Mm-hmm. It was General Electric at the time. But I went to a job fair, that's how I found out about it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So my last question is, what would you like future generations to know about working at Hanford during the Cold War?
Whatever you can get out of them.
What?
Whatever you can get from all the people that work there. I'd like them to know that.
Okay.
When are you going to do a summary of this when you're all done?
What
Of your own?
What do you mean?
From what you've learned. You're learning a lot of things interviewing people like me.
Yeah, I do.
And you're going to put it together like Ken Burns did with his Vietnam thing.
Maybe these.
That's what I'd like to have them know. It's your Ken Burns approach to this thing.
Okay. Well, we collect these and create. We do this more to generate primary sources, and then researchers go through our archives of these interviews and draw what they want. Takes a lot of time to set these up and do them, so I don't have as much time for writing as I would.
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking you, if you kind of giving you the opportunity to tell future generations what was the most important thing about being at Hanford during the Cold War. What would you like them to know about kind of working in plutonium production during the Cold War?
It was exciting and dangerous at the same time. And like I said, I'm just one real small piece in it. I'd like to have them see the big picture.
Sure. Did you ever feel any danger being either occupational or working at a site that was so important for the national defense effort?
Well, I do remember when we worked at the assignment where they smashed the hot 1,000-degree plutonium into, when they compressed it. One day the alarms went off, and they all went off. And
the radiation alarms?
Yeah, the radiation alarms. And Clarence Munson, I remember he was there. I asked him, what's going on? And he said, well, maybe we're all crapped up. That was the expression, crapped up, is for being irradiated. And I think that the alarm had just misfired.
Okay.
But everybody was scared for a while.
Sure.
So.
Did you have protection on, or were you just wearing?
Yeah, you wore
dosimeter?
white.
Oh, okay.
And you wore a radiation badge. You wore a white coat. And you looked like somebody in a hospital.
Right. Did you ever have an instance where you did get crapped up or a small amount or contaminated?
Well, when I worked at N Reactor, we had I had several what was like fuel elements on my desk. Use them for paperweights and stuff. I didn't realize there's probably a lot of zirconium in those things, and that's not good for you.
Okay.
So I probably got some exposure to zirconium and I didn't need. But I used them for weights. You know, I thought I was young and strong and would do like that with them.
That's funny. I mean, funny in kind of a
Stupid way.
yeah. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming and interviewing with us. I really appreciate you taking the time out, and thank you for sharing your stories about Hanford.
Okay.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we?
I'll probably think of all sorts of things on the way home.
Okay. Well, you can always send us an email and you
Okay.
know, and you want,
And
you,
if I can find those papers that describe everything I did at Hanford, I could probably go twice as long as I've gone now.
sure, that'd be great. Yeah, maybe you can.
Now, where would I go to get that? You know,
To get copies of the papers.
copies of somebody kept track because they gave them to me at one time.
Oh goodness, I don't know. I'm just we're here at WSU. We don't kind of on the outside looking in.
Okay,
even
where's
though we're-
where's the inside now?
I mean it's all
300
run by
area?
the Department of Energy. MSA is the main contractor, but I don't know what I don't know.
Where's
what,
the Department of Energy headquarters? In the big building downtown,
yeah,
Federal Building.
Yeah, Jadwin. Yeah.
Jadwin.
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably where I should go.
Records. Yeah, that would be. That's.
Do you
where
have a
I'd
card?
start. What's that?
Can I have one of your cards?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We can do
Okay.
that. Yeah. We good.
This,
Okay.
when I was in the 300 area, they had these fuel elements. Anyway, a guy had two of them, and he said, "Here, Tom, take these." And so I was going to put them together, and this was a trap. And they had a guy on each side of me. They grabbed my arm just like that. They said, "If you had put those together, you'd see a blue flash and be dead in 10 days."
Wow.
That was the type of coarse humor. Kill a guy.
Jeez. That's a really serious thing to joke about.
It is. Well, I didn't, and that's part of the reason I did so much study when I was doing the rotating things. I wanted to find out what.
What could kill you?
Yeah.
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 Wow.
There's also the beryllium.
And well, yeah, it was beryllium. What did I say? Zirconium. Well, is beryllium? I think gets in your lungs and screws you up.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Yeah.
And they use beryllium to assemble those
Yes.
fuel elements.
And they use them in the can monitoring units as well.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yep. We have one of those in our collection, and it took quite a lot of paperwork to get it to be released. Because I mean, it's inside a spring, and so you'd have to take the thing apart to be exposed. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Beryllium's not something to play around with.
True.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go over to the Jadwin and find out.
Yeah. Yeah.